Let's play a game. I will say something that is obviously true, and then I will say something that is completely false. He landed in what is now known as the Bahamas and became the first European to reach the Americas. Columbus Day is celebrated annually on the second Monday in October in the United States, Spain, and several other countries. Which one of these statements was false? There is a growing movement to stop celebrating the day altogether. Many people believe that Columbus was a brutal and greedy conqueror who enslaved and mistreated the native peoples of the Caribbean and the United States. But whether or not we celebrate Columbus Day, one thing is for sure. The discovery of the Americas changed the world forever. This process would continue for centuries, and it would eventually lead to the colonization of much of the world. But what if it had never happened? And this is where things get really interesting, because the colonization of other parts of the world would have had a profound impact on the way our world evolved. It could have led to the development of completely different technologies, industries, and ways of life. Many of the countries we know today may not exist at all. They may still be ruled by kings and queens, and the way people lived their daily lives would be very different. There would be no tacos or sombreros, no gumbo or jambalaya, buffalo wings or apple pie. And it's likely that European countries would have colonized other parts of the world instead. For example, imagine if the British had colonized Australia first. Would we be drinking coffee from giant metal jugs instead of ceramic mugs? Would we be wearing clogs instead of shoes? Who knows? The point is that the colonization of other parts of the world would have had a profound impact on the way our world evolved. And if you want to see more videos like this, just click the link in the description below. Until next time, would we be drinking tea from giant plastic cups today instead of mugs? Would we be driving on the left side of the road? The fact is that the discovery of the Americas led to the enslavement and slaughter of millions of people. It led to the destruction of countless cultures and traditions. It led to the loss of countless lives. History didn't choose that path. But if it had, would you be freer or more controlled? Would we be watching cricket matches on TV instead of football? Who knows? The point is that the colonization of other parts of the world would have had a profound impact on the way our world evolved. What if the Europeans had never discovered the Americas? Well, in that case, it's likely that they would have continued to look for other ways to get to Asia. And they may have eventually succeeded, but in the process, they may have also colonized other parts of the world instead. Did Columbus really discover America? Well, no. This is a common misconception. Although he was the first European to reach the Americas, what if the continents of North and South America had never been discovered by Europeans at all? What would the world be like today? We can't know for sure what would have happened if Europeans had never discovered the Americas, but it's fun to think about the possibilities. What's also interesting is that the discovery of the Americas also led to the Columbian Exchange, which was the transfer of plants, animals, diseases, and people between the Eastern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere. This exchange had a profound impact on both sides of the Atlantic. For example, it led to the introduction of new foods, like tomatoes and potatoes, to Europe, which helped to end famine in the region. It also led to the introduction of new diseases like smallpox and measles to the Americas, which devastated Native American populations who had no immunity to these diseases. Well, it's hard to say for sure, but we can make a few educated guesses. They wanted to find a way to get to India, China, and Japan without having to travel through the Middle East. And they also wanted to find a way to get access to the valuable resources that these countries had to offer, like spices, silk, and porcelain. Eventually, they found what they were looking for. They found new routes to Asia, and they also found something else that they weren't expecting: two entire continents full of people and resources. And this discovery changed everything. First of all, Europe would be very different. The countries we know today would likely exist, but they would be much smaller. Many of them would still be ruled by kings and queens instead of presidents and prime ministers, and the way people lived their daily lives would be very different. Without the resources and wealth of the Americas, Europe would be much poorer. There would be no transatlantic accent, because there would be no transatlantic telegraph. There would be no jazz music, because there would be no New Orleans. and it's likely that European countries would have colonized other parts of the world instead. There is evidence that people had been living there for thousands of years before he arrived. Your passport, language, even your dreams, all shaped by an empire thousands of miles away. That's a nightmare scenario for Indians, but a reality for many people around the world. Today, over 20 countries are still ruled by foreign powers. In India, it's the British. In the US, it's the US. But why do so many countries allow this to happen? Well, it all has to do with the way our world evolved over the past few hundred years. In fact, according to some estimates, there were over 1 million Native Americans living in the Americas when Columbus arrived. So who really discovered America? Well, technically, no one did. The continents of North and South America were always here. They were just unknown to most of the world. But once Europeans realized that there was a whole other landmass full of resources, trade routes, and potential wealth, they scrambled to claim it for themselves. And you have to tell me which one is which. Well, let's imagine how our world would be different today. If Europeans never discovered the Americas, the continent wouldn't be split between 20 different countries speaking multiple languages. It would still be inhabited by hundreds of distinct tribes with hundreds of unique cultures. We wouldn't be eating tacos or drinking mate. We wouldn't be watching baseball games or cheering at the Super Bowl. And while many Native American traditions would likely continue for hundreds of years, others would have died out long ago. It's impossible to know exactly how many people would be alive today. Had Europeans never claimed the land for themselves, but historians estimate that diseases brought from Europe may have killed millions of Native Americans over the course of a few decades. Ready? Here we go. In 1492, an Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus set sail west across the Atlantic Ocean in search of a new route to Asia. But what if no one ever did? What if the explorers of Europe never set sail across the Atlantic? And although Columbus Day is celebrated annually in the United States and several other countries, now let's imagine something a bit more extreme. For example, imagine being born in India, ruled not by Delhi, but by London. When Europeans first started exploring the world, they were looking for new trade routes to Asia. The Europeans began to explore and conquer these new lands, and they began to extract their resources and enslave the people who lived there. For example, they may have colonized Australia, New Zealand, or even Antarctica. Of course, this is all just speculation. If the Columbian Exchange never occurred, Europe would likely still be poor and undeveloped. For example, imagine if the Dutch had colonized South Africa first. Would we be speaking Afrikaans instead of English? In fact, it is possible that our world would be a much darker place today if the Europeans had never discovered the Americas. So, let me know what you think in the comments below.